All right, Cade Meal is a Fáilte, and welcome to the third episode of the Irish Hack. Today I'm joined by Kevin Markham, renowned golf photographer and writer. First up, of course, Adare Manor Golf Club. Are you excited, Kevin?
Yeah, I am. It's going to be an interesting conversation.
That's good. So Adare Manor is like described as the Augusta of Europe. I also seen it described as like Disneyland for golfers because from the moment you drive in the gates, it's a surreal experience. What's your relationship like with Adare Manor, Kevin?
I think Disneyland is a little unfair because that makes it sound Mickey Mouse, obviously. But the Augusta of Europe, yeah, sure. I mean, I think one of the interesting things was I was actually asked to write about Adare. And one of the things I was saying is that, this comparison with Augusta is slightly unfair to Adare. I mean, in a way, there should be courses in America going, hey, we're the Adare of the United States, because it really is. I mean, it's a spectacular golf course. Whether you like it or not, it's a spectacular golf course. I mean, I think you said you've played it twice. I've played it twice at this point in its new guise. I played it a few times as the old version. So it's a really interesting balance when you've played both of them and you prefer one to the other.
For sure. Out of curiosity, have you ever been to Augusta?
No.
Okay. God, it sounds like a humble brag, but people have heard in this podcast before that I've been to Augusta. I've been very lucky went to the Masters, and it is a direct comparison with Augusta National Golf Club by the way of it's pretty open off the tee. It's intimidating white bunkers, which actually don't really catch a lot of your balls, but they catch your eye line so much with the white sand. There was rumors going around that when I played with, you have to get a caddy. And JP came back from Augusta after the Masters, and he's like, we need more flower beds. We need this place to be more like Augusta, because that's what he wants it to be. Mm-hmm. It's an incredible, incredible place from the moment you drive in. We'll talk just a little bit about the history here for a second, and then we'll get back to the course. It was originally designed by Robert Trent Jones in 1995, and it held 3 Seniors Opens between 2002 and 2004, and also held the Irish Open in 2007 and 2008, which were won by Padraig Harrington and Richard Finch. Then in 2015, JP McManus bought the estate for an estimated €30 million, and the course was redesigned by Tom Fazio, who also redesigned Waterville. Kevin, just in terms of, you mentioned that you've played it a few times, how much has the course changed from its redesign by Fazio?
Well, the routing is exactly the same. That's not changed. You're still playing the same 18 holes, but essentially what they did was they kind of basically peeled off the flesh of the old Adare and just put on a completely new skin graft, and it's just a completely new golf course now. Very, very different in many ways. I mean, they took out hundreds, thousands of trees and then put in a lot of trees as well, but not obviously to the same degree at all. And they were putting in big trees. They put down a lot of earth to create undulations to fairways. And, well, I mean, the greens are what everybody talks about, as well as the conditioning. So it's the old course, but 2.0.
Much, much better from what I've heard. But I think you really liked the old course as well, didn't you?
Oh, I love the old course. I mean, an interesting conversation in terms of, Robert Trent Jones Snr designed it, and it would have been regarded as one of his, a particularly good design of his. And I know your friend and mine, Andy, is not a big fan of Trent Jones, but I actually think the old Adare was a really entertaining course. And I ranked it as the best parkland in Ireland back then. And seeing the changes, I mean, I'm not saying I don't really like Adare. I mean, I do. I think it's fabulous. But I think the old course had a little bit more character to it because it was intrinsically Irish.
Interesting. That's really, really interesting. Well, I never got to play the old course. So Adare Manor 2.0, would you consider that the best parkland course in Ireland now?
I think it has to be. I mean, under the circumstances, with all that amazing conditioning, the kind of money they've put in, at some point, I hope you're going to let me read all the stats because, I mean, they're phenomenal. I guess, yeah, I mean, there's really no one right now that can compete with it in terms of saying it's the best in the country. I'm going to be fascinated to see what happens when Druids Glen reopens after a multi-million investment that's due to open next year. That's going to be a really interesting comparison.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that one as well. I know you've been raving a lot about Druids Glen and the redesign that's happening down there, so that's going to be interesting. Back to this. How long do you need to read out some of these numbers? Will 10 minutes give you?
No, 10 minutes not needed. You want me to then, do you?
I was like, just it's so mind blowing. Just some of these numbers and the overhaul of the course and the money that was pumped into it. I think it's Go on, give us like the top 2 or 3 that you think are most fascinating.
Where do I start? Okay, well, let's have a look. 200,000 tons of sand were used. 64,000 of those went under the rough. This one I really like. 72 kilometers of drainage was installed, which is just incredible. What else we got? Obviously 56 greenkeepers, 44 bunkers, 19 new bridges over the River Meg. I mean, it just goes on. And to be honest, one of the great statistics that I like is about the bunkering, because I'm not absolutely sure about the number, but I know they brought in Padraig Harrington to have a look at the bunkering and to pick the sand that they were going to use. Apparently, he tested something like 16 different types of sand. I didn't even know there was more than one. So, I mean, he's obviously there having an absolute field day, working his way out of the bunkers, trying to pick the sand, and they end up with this very specific sand. So, it's been designed for golfers pretty much. It's amazing the kind of investment they put in it. And one final thing, and I mean, obviously there's a much longer list, but I won't bore everyone with it. They brought in trees that were essentially already mature or semi-mature trees. And these things cost €25,000 a pop. And you bring in this amazing machine that basically with a huge claw that just goes down, pulls out the earth, puts in the tree. And there you go. You've got your tree in position and it's like 25 years old already. It's amazing what they did. There was just no limit to how much money they were going to spend on it.
Because when they were spending all this money, all JP ever wanted was to hold one Ryder Cup in Limerick. That's really what he wanted. And he's got his wish. 2027, we'll see the Ryder Cup come down to Adare Manor. It is exceptional when you drive. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the experience of playing it, because that is what makes Adare Manor so great. You arrive up in your car and there's a butler is that what you call it?
Well, you talk about at the entrance?
At the entrance.
The security gate, and you have to go through and you stop and he's there in all his coats and tails and stuff. It's all very glamorous. I mean, maybe a little bit overkill for 90% of the population, but 10% wrap it up. So, and he stops. Yeah, a very friendly chat, and he's basically asking you who you are. Do you deserve to be here? Are you on the list? And then he pushes you on your way, and off you go to the clubhouse.
And that entrance is so grand and spectacular. It's in pristine condition. It's like a really kind of bright stone entrance. And then you drive through and you get into the pro shop, and the pro shop is spectacular as well. And you get to the course about an hour. My recommendation would be get to the course an hour before your tee time, have a look around, walk around the property, go into the dressing rooms, which are pristine as well. Get your clubs, get your clothes on, and go down to the driving range. A caddy comes to greet you on the driving range an hour before your tee time. Like I was blown away by the whole thing. The caddy comes down and it's a young lad, and he's having the crack with us. He starts cleaning my clubs. He's getting the distances to all the flags that I'm hitting towards. He's just like, you are treated like a professional golfer for the entire day. And this is before you've even hit a tee shot.
Yeah.
It's and then you get to the first tee and you're given your stroke saver, which I've probably mentioned about 20 times the last day referencing stroke savers, but it's just the whole day you're blown away by how magical the place is, but it's the experience that contributes so much to your day out.
I'm absolutely 100%. I mean, I was lucky enough last year to actually stay in the hotel. It was all part of the article that I was writing for the Irish Examiner, and they do. It's what I love about it is it's really high end, but at the same time, it's very friendly, very Irish. I mean, I've been at other, high-end places where you get that slightly snobby air and things like that. But the people at Adare are absolutely remarkably friendly. All of them, from first to last. I mean, really, it just adds to the occasion. I mean, in terms of you're talking about the practice range and then coming down. I think, did you end up playing with Pro V1s? I can't remember. Is that the practice range is full of these?
Yeah.
Heaven only knows how many of those accidentally disappear. But I mean, it's fabulous. And I guess that's got to be balanced against the green fee, which is a hefty amount. So I mean, you expect, I mean, certainly the people at the high end of playing golf and who go to these fancy resorts are going to expect the best possible treatment. So for the likes of you and me, when we turn up and just regular golfers, they turn up and they experience this. It really is. It's a potentially once in a lifetime experience.
Completely. Okay, so just when you're talking there about the people, they are really what make it for me. They're like, I'm just a normal lad just going out for a round of golf, and for 5 or 6 hours I'm treated like royalty.
Yeah.
But then you never feel like it's too much. They're so friendly, so normal. You don't feel like you're out of place. You going down there. You could walk in there in a pair of shorts and a pair of runners, or you could go in a full-on suit, and either way they would treat you the exact same. Same with caddies, same in the pro shop. It's a magical place. And then you get to the driving range, which I have never, ever, ever in my life seen a driving range as good as the one in Adare Manor. It's absolutely spectacular. And
it's an incredible thing, and you add to that the practice green. The practice green is exactly the same as the greens that are out there. So they're all playing with the Subair technology is put underneath that as well. I mean, you go to a lot of golf clubs and you go out on the practice green and you play, and then you go out into the course and you find the greens completely different, very different speeds and everything else. But this is basically the 19th green, or maybe it's the first. It's all part of an amazing setup.
Amazing. Okay, so then this is obviously like we're gone 12 minutes into this podcast and we haven't even started speaking about the course. So I hope that paints a good image of just how spectacular the entire place is. Moving on to the course. We can have like qualms about this. It's a 6,500 yard course. I want to get your thoughts before I give my thoughts, Kevin, and just your overall thoughts of the entire course.
I know we've already used the word pristine, but I guess it is pristine. The fairways up there like carpets. The greens are even better. It's all like velvet. The whole thing is just incredibly smooth and perfect. I mean, the joke about people going out and pair of scissors and cutting the grass around the greens to make sure they're absolutely the right length. That's all sort of part of the myth behind it. But when you get out and you play it, you find that it's absolutely true. It's just builds your excitement to an incredible level. I mean, if you are ever asked to go and play at Adare, take the money and use it and spend it and do it. Just to hell with the consequences, because you'll never play anything like it. Now, my own personal feelings about it are slightly different. We can get onto those in a second. But I just think in terms of playing something like Adare, you won't ever have the opportunity to do something like this again, because there is no other course that I've ever seen apart from Augusta. And there may be some other courses in the States that also have this amazing, glamorous feel to it. But certainly in Europe, I don't think we're the only course with Subair technology under the greens and the kind of money that was just basically an open checkbook. And I know there's this story about JP, who apparently was asked about the expenditure and how much it was. And he said, if I ever had to look at my checkbook to figure it out, this would never have happened. A very rich man basically just going, I'm going to create something that is spectacular. And he did. And I think, you only have to walk down to that first tee. You've got the little very quaint halfway house on your left, and you've got the 9th green on your right-hand side. And you only have to look at that green to go, oh, wow, this is just going to be something out of this world. So, I mean, I will leave you on the first tee and you can go from there.
Oh, you've taken every single adjective out of my mouth just in the last 2 minutes. You've summed it up extremely well there. So you walk by the halfway house and you get your stroke saver, and you have to bring a caddy. So we have to mention, first of all, the price. It's like around €400 for a green fee plus €75 for a mandatory caddy. You have to take a caddy. That's not questionable. Plus your tip if you like. I think when we played down there a few years ago, I think our caddies had money on us because they were rooting so hard for each of us. They bring you to the first tee box, and I think straight away you get a good image of just what to expect from the day. It's pretty open off the tee. There's a big intimidating bunker down the left-hand side. The thing about it there is JP wanted to make it playable for everyone, or maybe Fazio wanted to make it playable for everyone, no matter what your handicap. There was no fun, and apparently that's why the rough is so low. The rough's only like 1.5 inches or so, and even less maybe. And apparently JP wanted to be able to make people shape their shots rather than just hacking out of rough every time. So if you're under a tree, you actually have potential to make something happen. The first hole really greets you with this. Like I mentioned, it's that intimidating bunker down the left, and then the approach into the green. Straight away you realize if you land that to the right hand side of the green and let it roll down, you straight away get the sense of, oh my god, I am in for a fun day here. If I can just play these shots to these greens and use these contours, I am going to fall in love with this place today.
I think the interesting thing is that you talk about the first green. I mean, the first green is probably the least shaped of all of them. I mean, most of the greens are kind of raised up with these phenomenal runoffs around, which are almost twice the size of the green or something. I can't remember quite the statistic on that one. But the first green is actually relatively level to the ground because you've just gone over the little stream. It's all beautifully stone-faced stream and a beautiful bridge that takes you over. I mean, it all really sets a lovely tone. And you play that and you get off that green and you're thinking, okay, the green is nice and shaped. Nothing like the ninth I've just seen when I walked past the halfway house. But then after that, then it really explodes. And I think your point about the playability off the tee is absolutely right. I mean, it is designed to be playable, friendly, accessible to all. You talk about the rough. Is it actually rough? I mean, they've got to a point where they don't really want rough. And the idea is that unless you put the ball in the water, you are always going to find your ball. And you can always play it. And this is, again, why they removed an awful lot of the trees. They wanted to open up the views of this amazing Gothic manor house, which is the 5-star hotel now, but also just to make the course so much more playable for all.
I think I love that first hole so much. The green, like you mentioned, it's like pretty flat, but I just love the excitement of hitting over the water, using the contour to the right of the green, and allowing your ball to come back down. Straight away, you get this sense of this is going to be a wild day, and you get to realize pretty quick how fast these greens are. Give me the first 5 holes. I want to leave out the 6th par 3 because I'll get to that in a second. First 5 holes. Do you have a particular favorite in that stretch?
I would say the 2nd or the 3rd would be my favorite. I mean, I like the first. It's a nice, to me, it's a nice, I wouldn't say gentle because obviously you've got a second shot that's got to take it on the stream. But the 2nd and the 3rd, I'd go with the 2nd. Suits my draw anyway, but I guess partly because you get to face what the real greens are going to look like for the rest of your round. The real education. Okay,
I think I would have picked the 2nd as well. I'm not a huge fan of the par 3, the 4th hole. Just my opinion. But I'm getting back to the 2nd. The 2nd then, like, the first hole you're greeted with that little run, them contours to the right hand side of the green that you can use to bring your ball back down. The 2nd green is the exact opposite. Like, a third of the green on the right hand side is this extreme runoff area. And this is the great thing about playing with a caddy is that they'll tell you this. But if you went out there to play by yourself for the first time, you would not know just how severe that runoff is. And then you'd have to keep it to the left-hand side of that. And I think then you're like, it boggles questions in your mind because you're like, oh, is there going to be runoff in this green or is there going to be a contour that I can use? I love that approach to the 2nd hole as well. And I'm going to probably mention this a few times. This is a great thing about Adare Manor is the fact that the approach shots are so exciting with all of these runoff areas.
There's a professional, John Kelly, who I know rates this course as the best course in Ireland. Slightly insane in the head, but let's not tell him that. But he said that the approach shots to the greens at Adare, he said they are the best of any course he's played in Ireland. So agreeing with your point, absolutely. It is phenomenally exciting to hit those shots because the greens are so big, because of the contours. And I think on a slightly different level, there is never anything quite as exciting as a caddy turning around to you and saying, you need to hit the ball there, and then you do it. Because if you do that, you feel like royalty.
Completely. Yeah, so you couldn't, if you spent this money, just to get back to this, if you spent the money on it and you didn't take a caddy, you would, I understand why it's mandatory. It's obviously the experience, but they do make it so much more enjoyable because there are them certain runoffs that you would never ever know. I think you, judging by the look in your face, you love the fourth hole, or like the fourth hole, the par 3. It's 155 yards.
Go on.
Sorry, it's 155 yards, severe runoff all around the green. It's very, very intimidating. It's not that I don't like it. I just think it's definitely not my favorite par 3 out there. I think it's, geez, I'll think about this for a second and then rate the par 3s. But your thoughts?
No, it's not that I don't agree with you. I mean, the fourth is not particularly exceptional compared to the rest of it. The reason, sorry, I made a face, if that's what I did, was because I know that there was talk. I mean, the caddy I had was saying to me that they actually were trying to buy the land on the other side of the river, and they were going to try and make that into the par 3, but the guy wouldn't sell, or presumably he saw JP at the top of the letterhead and went, right, I want 40 million for 20 square feet. So that is not happening at the moment. It may happen in the future. So that's why I was making a face, because I thought they could potentially make that into something jaw-droppingly good.
That was incredible. Never knew that story. Okay, then you get going back to this point. So then the fourth hole has this extreme runoff. The third hole, the second hole has these extreme runoffs. The fifth hole is the exact opposite. Then again, it's like you have to take on as much of the water as you can to leave yourself with potentially like a 9-iron or a wedge into a green that has this massive slope to the left-hand side of the green that players can use to let their ball run down. I'm trying to work out if I love that hole, because using this slope to the left-hand side and you're only hitting a wedge, I'd love if I was hitting a 5-iron or 4-iron in there to that green, because I could let it run up along the side. Only hitting a wedge, you feel like I can just take this on direct hit flag. There's no need for me to really hit that slope on the left-hand side.
Well, I'm guessing that when you played it, the flag was on the left-hand side, because when I played it, the pin was at the back right. And so I was coming in from the right-hand side, and I was trying to use the bank at the back of the green to let the ball come back down onto the green. So, I mean, I guess it's going to be a question of where the pin is. I think you shouldn't be going too close to the water. I mean, there's a bunker on the right, on the fairway, which really forces you to play left. Didn't work for me. I still ended up in it. But it's supposed to go to the left-hand side, and then you have this straight shot up to the green, which basically is a big bowl around the back of the green. So you're actually encouraged almost to go long, because you'll actually escape with it. And it's better to be long than short probably on that hole. Although maybe with the slope of the green, that's not quite true. The thing is that's now, I wanted to say it's index 12, but I think it's actually higher. I think it might be. Is it index 18? Do you have the scorecard there?
I have it.
I know it. The interesting thing about it is, go on.
The sixth hole is an index 7.
Okay, well that's changed, because when I played it was definitely 12 or something. It used to be index 1.
This actually could be an old scorecard. This could be from like 3 or 4 years or 3 years ago. So maybe I will need to double check that. That's interesting though. I want to move on to the sixth.
Okay.
I love the sixth hole.
Yeah, it's brilliant par 3.
I think this is where, to me, it's a standout hole on the first 5 out of the first 7 holes. I think it's just to give people an idea of what it is. It's like It's a par 3, obviously. It's 183 yards off the white. It's the wind, I think, was blowing off the right hand side with a bunker to the front right of the green. Extreme runoffs all around the green. Water back, right, and left. Like, I saw Matt Fitzpatrick at the Adare Manor Pro-Am, and he was trying his hardest just to think, what club am I going to hit here? I don't know how far downhill it plays. It's probably about 20 yards downhill.
Yeah.
20 yards downhill. The wind is howling off your right-hand side, and there's a bunker to the right-hand side of the green. If you miss the green, you're probably wet, or you're having an incredibly tough chip to play up this steep mound onto a green that is so hardly sloped from back to front. And you just stand up there and you're like, where am I? Like, the green looks massive, but you're thinking to yourself, where am I going to put this ball? Because there just looks like danger everywhere here. Yeah,
you can't. The only option is to play short. And of course, on a par 3, you're never going to play short. You're always going for the green. It's basically, it just sticks out into that lake on the 3 sides. So it becomes a really, really tricky shot. But it's such an impressive tee shot to stand up there and try and hit it. And people walking off the green are always going to be watching to see what you do when you're coming down behind them. It's a really, really good hole. And as you say, the fall offs around the side, if you miss, you are in such trouble.
So yeah, and people always talk about, I was reading reviews about this earlier, blogs. They talk about the fact that the 7th hole is like the first really exciting hole that you get to see at Adare Manor. I think the 6th is just, I reiterate my point again, it's a massive green, and you think to yourself, this is going to be easy. But then when you start looking down and you start overthinking it, it just looks like danger everywhere. And then you're trying to pick out what club you're going to hit. It's a spectacular green, and one of the most exciting approach shots that you'll hit all day, in my opinion.
Well, on the 6th or the 7th?
Or sorry, the 6th.
Yeah. No. When you said approach, I was thinking, okay, you're laying up for your from the tee.
Yeah. No, I'm not. I won't lay up. I get too much slagging. So I alluded to it there already. A 7th hole. Most people love the 7th hole. And they consider it one of the best holes in like the first 8 holes, because people always refer to the 9th as the best hole in the front 9. Thoughts on the 7th?
Well, the funny thing is, I would actually tend to agree with you and say that the 6th hole for me is probably the first brilliant hole. I like the 7th. It's a par 5, and you can certainly go for it in 2 if you hit a really good drive. But the risk is phenomenal, because again, you've got the green sticking out into the water. So if you miss slightly to the right, you're wet. So hit a drive, hit a sensible second shot, and suddenly you can pitch your way into the green. It's dramatic because of the water. I guess that's why everyone talks about it, because there's high risk on the first shot. The second shot can have a huge amount of risk, and no matter where you are, the third shot is always going to be slightly risky because of the water, even if you're sort of 70, 80 yards out. Sorry about the dog.
Yeah.
So, that's what you have to face. So I guess from the interest point of view, that 7th hole is probably the first of the interesting holes. But I think the 6th is actually a more enjoyable hole to play.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm trying to work out if I love the 7th. It's the water is what makes it so exciting, and the fact that it is reachable in 2, and you've danger down the right hand side. If you fade the ball, you are terrified standing on that tee box with the water all down the right hand side. And it's very similar to the 6th hole, which I was mentioning earlier, or 6th hole, with the water coming with the mound on the left hand side. God, what? I'm after drawing a blank here.
Sorry. Yeah, I think the 3rd. Was it the 3rd? No, the 2nd you were talking about the mound. No, you weren't.
No, the 5th hole. Sorry, the 5th hole, where you're trying to take on as much water as you can. With the big mound.
You got me. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, the 5th. All right, fine.
The 5th. But the thing is, on the drive, that you're trying to take off as much as you can by hitting over as much water as you can, and that's the really exciting part about it. And if you fade the ball, and you get your tee shot away, you're not done yet. You're standing over your approach shot into the green if you're going for it in 2, and you're equally as nervous on your approach shot as you were on your drive. It's the green is like not one of the most dramatic greens out there. There's a steep run off to the left hand side of the green. It's just, to me, just me personally speaking, it doesn't excite me a ton. But
the green now,
the hole in general, or the green, I'm not a big fan of the green either.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing is one of my bugbears about Fazio's work. Here's me criticizing a successful designer, but the greens were, I mean, they're all big. They're all obviously these huge slopes and huge runoffs. It becomes almost monotonous, the size and the shape of them. That, to be honest, is probably my biggest thing about why I prefer the old Adare to this Adare, is that I feel the greens have just, I don't want to say they've been tricked up, but there is this element that they've just gone, okay, we're going to create this huge, sprawling animal of a green, which is what you see when you walk down, and you see that ninth green on the right-hand side as you walk to the first. So I think, in a way, the 7th is actually quite a gentle difference to what else is there. So I don't mind the green, but the hole just kind of lacks a little bit of punch for me. It should be incredibly dramatic and brilliant, and obviously off the tee, it's terrifying. But I just find the second shot, if you're not going for the green, is quite ordinary. You're just punching it down to try and get closer to the green. So I don't know. I mean, the green, maybe not as dramatic as elsewhere, but it's still a strong green.
Yeah, most clubs in Ireland, I think, would die for a green like that. So I think we're looking for stuff here. So people always rave about the 9th. I actually really like the 8th hole. I think it's a 2-tiered green. The drive, there's a bunker right there, 272 yards, and watch this in the Pro-Am. Not one person came within 30 yards of the bunker along the right-hand side, and they were all just aiming out there.
Okay.
And I remember when I played it, I was just like, I aimed at that bunker as well, and obviously I'm not near as long as those, but we were playing off the white tees. I didn't get near it either. So I'm not entirely sure of the purpose of that, because I've never ever seen anybody even reach it, including the professionals. But I love the 8th green. It's a 2-tiered green. If the pin's at the back left, your approach shot is, you can see the 2 tiers from the fairway, and that's what makes it great, because you feel to yourself, I have to get back there. But then there's a steep runoff over the back of the green as well. I absolutely loved the 8th green so much. I could hit approach shots into that green all day, wherever the pin is, whether it's in the front or the back.
It's just one of the other fabulous greens. I mean, my comment earlier on about them, a certain monotony to it. I'm not going to take that back, because that is my one thing that I don't like about it, is that they do all feel so big, but it doesn't mean it's not a brilliant green. And if you love playing into greens that present themselves that way and give you, I mean, you're talking about the tier on the green, the fact you can see it from the fairway. There are plenty of greens, and to be perfectly honest, the majority of greens that have tiers, you don't necessarily know that until you've hit your ball into them. So from that point of view, it's a real challenge for any kind of golfer of any level. You mentioned the bunker there. I didn't know that about the Pro-Am. I think that's fascinating. I imagine that when the Ryder Cup comes, they'll push the guys forward to the white tees for one of the days to see if they can actually get them to hit the ball into the bunker.
Yeah. I stood in that tee box for about 4 hours at the Pro-Am, and even Bryson actually did get over it, I think. Jeez. I think he absolutely smashed one, and my brother actually went viral on Twitter of a video that he took. But anyways, so that's just my viewpoint. I didn't see anybody come near to it, and I remember me standing up there playing it. I was like, I'm just going to hit it at that bunker because I'm not coming close to it. It's 272 yards off the white tees, and if they're playing from the back tee box, it's another 61 yards. So that's like 333 yards to that bunker, which a lot of people just aren't going to reach. Kevin, we'd be killed if we didn't chat about the 9th green, which some people would refer, or the 9th hole, which some people would refer to as the best hole on the course or in Ireland, the best par 5 in Ireland. What would you make of that sentiment if somebody said that to you?
I'll have words. It's a fine hole. Best par 5 in Ireland. Maybe in the running for a top 10, but I don't think it's in the running for the best par 5. But the hole is fabulous off the tee. It's a lovely big fairway, but the fairway moves it's like an ocean swell. It goes up and down as you go into the green, and it's just, you hit your first drive and you hit a cracking drive, and then you don't even know that there are bunkers waiting for your second shot. I got caught out my caddy said, "Don't hit whatever I was hitting," and I went, I'll hit that and I've not get close to the green, stuffed in the bunker. So, again, good idea to have a caddy with you. It'll tell you, that's not what you're going to do. But I love the way it moves. I love that fairway. I mean, that's all manufactured because that used to be fairly level when in the old guys. So now they've changed it and they brought in all that earth to bring that huge sort of wave-like motion to it. And it's almost hypnotic. It's so beautiful.
Completely agree. And you stand up in there in the tee box and the manor is in the background, providing a stunning backdrop. Okay, bear with me for a second. And I know I mentioned this about some of the holes last day. I just wish you were able to reach it in 2. That's, even at the Pro-Am when I was watching it, I was fascinated to see how players would play it, and not one of them went for it in 2, I don't think. Because the green is so incredible. There's such a steep runoff over the back of the green that you could say to yourself, listen, I'm going to try this. I'm going to take out a 5-wood or 3-wood or whatever I have and go for the green and then potentially run over the back, rather than just... The strategy just seems to be a lot of people just hit driver, hit an iron down there, and then just hit a wedge, hopefully into the green, or try not to go long. That is my only qualm with the 9th hole, is that you can't reach in 2, which I think would be so exciting if you could, and it'd be such a nice way to finish off your front 9.
Well, you've got the scorecard there. What's the distance from the white tees then?
568 yards.
Okay, and what's it for the 18th?
Oh, geez, Kevin, you're testing me here. The 18th is 525 yards.
Okay, so perfect. It's the
40 yards.
Yeah, it's and the 18th it really does encourage you to try and go for it in 2. That's interesting, and it comes back to at the Ryder Cup. Don't be at all surprised if they push them forward to encourage them to go for the green in 2.
Yeah, but that was my only pick with it. But it's an exceptional hole. The fairway, you can have an uphill lie, a downhill lie, exactly what you're saying there, the mountain and the fairway. There's so many aspects to consider this, and it's such a great way to finish off the front 9.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
So people say that the front 9's very good at Adare Manor. The back 9 is where it becomes like Augusta National Golf Club. The back 9 is one of the most sensational 9 holes of golf that you play anywhere in the world.
I think it's a phenomenal 9. And again, I'm sorry, I keep referencing the Ryder Cup, but I know that there is a genuine concern that the 2 of the best holes on the course, and 3 if you include 15, you got 15, 16, and 18. I mean, these guys are showstopper holes, and they're concerned that a lot of the Ryder Cup matches will actually be finished before they reach these. So all the spectacular views and the camera work that you would see of them playing these amazing holes may not happen nearly as much as they wanted to. There was talk, I don't know how serious it was, of reversing the 9s, but so that they can actually show these holes. But yeah, I mean, if I know some matches obviously always will reach 18 inevitably, but it may not be that many because it's such a big course, and getting to the 18th, there's some seriously dramatic holes to stop people on the back 9, and I mean, it's going to be so interesting to watch what happens on the 15th as well. Short par 4. I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry.
No, you're all good. You're all good. So the President's Cup a few weeks ago, they did actually change. There were some holes they changed around. They rerouted the course specifically the US team wanted to reroute the course so that they would have like a better advantage. They could do something like that for the Ryder Cup. I just don't know how you'd weave in and out of the course. People will fast forward to the 15th and the 16th, 17th, 18th. I honestly, the 10th hole, the approach into that 10th hole it's so simplistic from the tee. It looks like a straightforward hole. The green is perched on this elevated green with steep runoffs all around and a bunker garden in the front and center. I absolutely was fascinated by the 10th green.
Yeah, I know you're a fan of the 10th when we were talking earlier. It is. It's like perched up on a little knob, and it's not the big. I mean, they're all huge greens, but this one is not the biggest by any.
No, it's not at all.
And anything. I mean, I went over the back of it, and it's no fun playing from there. So, I mean, even with the smoothness of the surrounds of the greens, you're chipping up potentially 6-8 feet, above you to get onto a green that, well, if you're playing from the back, is going to be sloping away from you. It is an absolutely fabulous shot. I mean, even the setting of the green on the land is just fabulous.
For sure. Fast forward and then, because I know we'll probably spend a few minutes chatting about from 15 to 18, 11, 12, 13. So 12, unless do you have any comments about 11?
Well, I like 11. It's another nice par 3 that you just, you can't miss right because you're going to the river. So, you play over the river. I mean, it's a nice, pretty par 3, and I think it's got an awful lot more bite than you'd think it has. The 12th, the par 5, I like that hole. The shot into the green, tricky enough, but you can't rush past the 13th because the 13th is probably the best hole on the course. And since we're talking about Augusta, the most Augusta-like as well.
I'm so happy you said that about 13th. The 13th is this like long and shallow green. There's an intimidating bunker right there at 220 yards, and it's 244 yards to carry it. And then the approach shot is this, like I mentioned, this long and shallow green. And it's set in between these trees, and that is really where you stand back and you think to yourself, am I in Augusta National Golf Club? Because just with the white sand and the bunkers in between the tree line, and you don't feel like it's ever, you don't feel like you're ever crowded with the amount of trees that are there, but you're just in such awe of the whole course once you step onto that 13th tee. It's a fabulous, fabulous hole, and I'm not sure if I'd rate it as my favorite. We can maybe mention that at the end, but I absolutely love that hole as well. And there's so many holes here on the back nine that we can just rant and rave about all day. Compared to the front nine, where they're like people might have a few qualms. I think it's insane. The 14th, I'll give me your thoughts anyway. I'm after chatting there for about 2 minutes.
I really like the 14th. I think it's one of those ones that's incredibly underrated because it gets stuck between the amazing hole that is the 13th and then the short par 4 15th, which plays up right alongside the river. So everyone kind of skips past the 14th, which is such a shame because it's a really good hole. The setting is nice. The trees are perfectly located on the left-hand side. You've got water on the right-hand side. And I mean, it's just from the out of the trees, you're hitting your tee shot, and you've got to avoid the left-hand side if you want to get into the green. I don't know why people just sort of don't mention it. I mean, even in its old guys, people didn't talk about the 14th. In much the same way that we were saying about the 6th hole, people don't talk about certain holes because of what comes before them or what comes after them. So you've got to have brilliance, and then there's just one step back from brilliance, and I think that's where 14 sits. And it sits between two holes which are brilliant. So it gets forgotten about. So
I want to clarify, I love the design of this hole. But what I also love so much is just the way that greets you around the manor. Like the tee box is situated between a massive cluster of trees, and you can kind of see glimpses of the manor as you're walking down the fairway. And then you weave around to the left-hand side to that green, and you get this spectacular view of the manor. And maybe that's why people just get lost in just how beautiful the setting is, that they forget about how magical the actual hole is, because that green, hitting that approach shot into that green is equally as exciting as any other approach shot out there, because there's water all around to the right-hand side, like you mentioned, and the green also fades around to the right-hand side. It's a sensational hole, and you're exactly right in what you're saying. It gets lost because people are probably so excited to play one of the best drivable par 4s in Ireland, the 15th hole.
Yes, well, I mean that is it. And then just quickly going back, you know, you're talking about the drive on 14, 13, 14, and 15 are probably the toughest drives. I mean, obviously the seventh has all that water, but in terms of the trees and the shapes of the land, the 13th and 14th are not easy, and 13 is probably the toughest non-water drive that there is at Adare. So you get on to 15 and you've got this water all on the right. And again, I know when we were talking about Port Salam in the second hole, the river that runs in front of the green, I always get a little bit confused to myself as to what's a stream and what's a river and how you define them. And some people will say, well, if it's 5 feet wide, it's a river. It's not a stream. I mean, we're talking yards and yards wide here. I mean, you know, the Meg is, I don't know, 20 yards wide. So and it's so close to the right-hand side, and the green just sits right above it, and then right on the other side of the river is this beautiful manor hotel. So it's such a daunting drive. And you know, you talk about the fade on 7. I obviously hit a draw, so I mean, I'm aiming almost at the manor across on the other side of the river in the hope that I'm going to draw it back onto the fairway and stay there. So it's never easy whether you fade or draw the ball. You've got to factor it in, unless you hit the ball dead straight, and there aren't many of those. So it's terrifying. But you want to nail it, right? Because you know you can almost reach it. I mean, even people who only hit the ball, 200 yards off the tee, you know, they're still there going, oh, I can get so close. And why wouldn't you try that? You know, you've paid an awful lot of money for the privilege of playing this course. Have fun, and if you go in the water, take a mulligan.
Okay, you've summed it up so well there. I will put in a slight brag to say I did eagle this hole. Drove to about 3 feet, but it is one of them. Would you consider it the best drivable par 4 in Ireland?
Blimey. Yeah, well, it must be certainly very close. I'd have to go away and think about that and go through all the courses in my head. But yeah, I mean, clearly, because if you find the green, given the challenge of the river, yeah, that makes it an exceptional hole to drive. You really drove it to 3 feet. Good God.
Kevin, I'm not going to lie here. We honestly thought it was going in. The caddies were jumping around. We were getting armbands out. We were going to go for a little swim if it went in, jumping around. Best drive I've ever hit in my life. But yeah, I don't know how much people really want to hear me talk about that. My friend actually hit it to the left-hand side of the green, and similar to every other hole out there, he was putting it from off the green and going up this 6 feet elevation towards the green. He actually made his birdie putt from there, which was outrageous. So but just getting back to the hole,
yeah,
because it's in the bunkers down the left-hand side. So, and that's a tough bunker to get out of as well. So you think to yourself, stand on the tee, okay, I'm just going to aim up the left-hand side. But if you manage to somehow reach that bunker, you're not safe though. I think Ryder Cup, this will be the hole that everybody will remember, because there's so much punishment and there's nowhere to miss it. And there's even laying up, you can hit 219 yards and only have 80 yards into the green. You're still terrified. So there's so many strategy and decisions that go into this, and people have their thoughts in the tee box. I absolutely fascinated by the 15th hole. And yeah, that would be the one that people look forward to in 2027.
Well, I think if I was playing for money, I would probably hit a 5-iron off the tee and then hit a decent wedge straight into the hole so that I can have a half with you. But other than that, I mean, you're going to take out the driver. I mean, why wouldn't you?
So the guy that we were playing, we actually did have money going on it, and my partner stood up and he took an iron off the tee and he sliced it into the water. So I don't think it's ever. I wish it was that easy of a game, but he found out the hard way just how punishing that water was. Okay, 16th hole, par 3. This green is like 169 yards long, 155 yards
wide.
How far?
85
yards wide. So this is probably like one of the signature pieces of Adare Manor, because just how big this green is, and it's so exciting. So many different pin positions. You're talking earlier about having massive greens at Adare Manor. This is this is where it really becomes so pronounced as just how big these greens are.
Yeah, it's like the mother of all greens. I know the hole can play from 120 to 180 yards long, depending if it's front left or back right. So the green is slightly angled when you're standing on the tee. It's slightly angled away from you, and it's all water across the front. This big pond, small lake, take your pick. It's beautiful stone face front to it, and it's just all the way. You can bail out left if you want, but I mean, 120 yards, who's going to do that? But it's all water, and then behind it, it's all copper beach. So it's just this blaze of color and this beautiful green just sitting there waiting to be hit. And you can't be sure. I mean, obviously, you're straight in the water. And if you go long over the back of the green, you're then left with you're right down one of their huge runoffs. And then you've got to get back up into the green and not go into the water the other side. So it's it really is. It's one of the best, certainly one of the most exciting par threes in Ireland.
That's exactly what I was going to make my point about. Was you think to yourself, oh, it's a 7-iron or whatever it is, but then you think, okay, wait, I definitely don't want to be short. I'll hit a 6, and if you go over the back, you're say 4 or 5 feet below the surface of the green, trying to chip or putt up to a green that slopes pretty heavily towards the water. So it gets in your head, and you just have to hit a good approach shot there. It's a really, really enjoyable par 3, and I love the way the green being 85 yards wide. There's so many different pin positions that they can do this for. The thing we keep going back to is Ryder Cup. That hole will not play the same any 2 sessions in a row.
No, absolutely not. And absolutely not. I mean, it's going to be fascinating. I mean, I can see them putting it on the front left, really tight, close to the water for one of the days. Probably not a 4-ball, but certainly they'll fancy it for a foursomes. And that's implying that they might even actually do it during the middle of the round. They might move the hole location, because in a foursomes match that late in the day, if it's like 3-4 yards from the front of the green, that's going to be thrilling if they're hitting like 120, 130 yards. It should be easy, right? You should get it within 10 feet. But if you're not within 10 feet and you're just a little bit short, you're in the water. So it's going to be absolutely fabulous to watch that. Yeah,
that stretch of 15 and 16, your heart rate does not drop below 120 beats per minute for the half an hour that you're playing the two of them, because the approach shot on 15, the drive on 15, the approach shot on 16, it's a fantastic stretch of holes. My qualm is, I think people forget about the 17th sometimes, which I personally think is because they talk about the 15th, and it's a little bit about like the 14th as well. People getting lost and talking about the 15th and 16th and the 18th. The 17th is like, the drive there is spectacular, and I absolutely love the 17th hole, and it doesn't get enough comments or feedback or praise.
No, it doesn't. And again, it's a hole that's changed shape. I mean, it's tight between the trees. And when I say tight, I mean as tight as Adare gets alongside the 13th. But I mean, it's a fairway you want to hit, because again, you've got that green that sits up high, potentially below you, slightly below you if you're up on the ridge. You're sort of driving off the tee at this ridge that just falls down slightly to the right. And if you're on that, then you've got a shot into a green, which is maybe just a little bit below you. So you see that much more of it. I mean, my caddy, when I was playing it, he was saying, oh, you need try and hit this. And I was going, well, where's that going to put me? And he goes, oh, you want to be on the front left. And I went, well, I don't want to be on the front left. I want to be on the back right. And, you should listen to the guy, because if you're short and you're on the front left, you're okay. If you go long or right, but by going for the back right, you're gone. It's a question of inches, but that's why the caddy works. And we talk about the 16th and where that pin position is. You don't really know. Okay, you might have a rangefinder or whatever it is to tell you it's 144 yards, but your caddy's going to go. He's going to go, yeah, but because there's wind, or because you can't afford to be long with 144, and he's already watched you hitting your clubs and knows that you hit your 8-iron 150, and 150 is 2 yards too long. So you've got to listen to him, and that's exactly the same going into 17. And I agree with you. Again, it's one of those holes that's lost because of the brilliance before it and the brilliance after it.
Yeah, exactly. But then this 15th and the 16th bring you towards the manor. The 17th weaves you back around towards in between the trees, which is Augusta like again. And then the 18th is, my God, it's one of the most exciting holes that you will ever play. If you go for it in 2, it's a tough drive. It's not easy because there's water all down the left-hand side. But if you want to give yourself the shortest possible approach into the green, you need to hug that water on the left-hand side. If you spray it out to the right-hand side towards the bunker, there's actually a tree out there that's probably like 40 feet tall, and it stops you going for the green if you spray it out right to keep safe. So, and I didn't even think about that until I was actually punished for it, and by just aiming out towards right-hand side, and the caddy was like, you can't go there because that tree, and it's actually so well designed, that 18th hole, then the approach shot into it.
Well, I mean, you talked about the 9th being one of the best par 5s. I mean, for me, the 18th is one of the best par 5s, and it is a lot better than it used to be. If you played it as the old course, well, then you know what I'm talking about. But essentially, so the green is on the other side of the river. So you have the fairway that just shoots straight up the right-hand side, hugging the river, and then the actual green is on the other side. And it used to be that there's a massive bank of trees in front of the green. So you didn't have any room to get into that green, really, with a second shot. You kind of were forced to keep going up the fairway side and then play across the river. Those trees all got removed. And what Fazio did was he extended the fairway back down the left-hand side. So an awful lot more golfers can now hit a decent drive and at least lay up, but on the other side of the river, as opposed to going straight on. But you have the choice. So, the optimum is to go over the river, but that obviously involves an awful lot more risk, but it makes it an easier approach shot to get into the green, as opposed to trying to hit potentially an 80 or 100 or 140 yard shot straight over the river to a green that, well, it's another of the big, beautiful greens with runoffs. So, you've got to take your pick and play the strategy that you want.
And even if you do go up to the left-hand side of the green where that fairway is extended, I think that's actually a tougher shot to play than laying up towards up the fairway to the right-hand side, because there's so many slopes and mounds, and there's a punishing bunker right there about 40 yards short of the green, that if you go in that, you have this wedge that you're trying to flick onto a green. It's one of the most difficult shots in golf, playing that kind of 40-yard wedge shot from a bunker. I think it's like, and then the green has this massive runoff area that you mentioned there over the back left. So if you go for it in 2 and you're not absolutely perfect with your distance, you're down this massive hollow, similar to the 16th, where you're pitching back up the mound and you're terrified that this green is like sloping towards the water. It's there's just so many good things. I think I agree with you as well. I think the 18th is a better par 5 than the 9th, personally.
It's one of the best finishing holes in Ireland. I mean, we talk about par 5s. I mean, the par 5 at Waterville, the 18th, and the par 5 at Adare are probably the 2 best par 5 finishing holes that there are. Absolutely sensational. And the story about the 18th green is Fazio got Padraig Harrington, gave him 20 golf balls, put them all different locations, and basically said, right, play into the green from there. So he wasn't just digging in the sand, Padraig. They actually got him playing shots into the 18th, so that Fazio could decide how he wanted to shape the greens and the land in front of on the left-hand side, and position the bunkers, all those different things. He wanted to see how Padraig Harrington handled it. And, again, just a nice little bit of story, and shows the depth that these guys went to make sure they had the most incredible experience possible.
That's fascinating. God, I can't believe it's like an hour gone, and to be honest, we could probably do another hour chatting about all things Adare Manor. Kevin, yeah, you summed up pretty well. Any closing remarks on Adare?
It's a phenomenal experience. I mean, I know I said it earlier, if you have the money, I know a lot of people don't, and I know a lot of people won't pay more than 50, 80, 100 quid for a green fee. Fair enough, you'll miss some amazing experiences, and it does require a deep pocket to come down to Adare and play it, but it is something so utterly different, it will live with you forever, because it's that kind of experience from start to finish, and that's not just on the golf course. Said
it perfectly. Kevin, listen, thanks very much for jumping on. for anybody out there listening, you can find Kevin on Twitter at Kevin Markham, writing for Irish Examiner and Irish Golfer. And also be sure to check out his fantastic golf photos at kevinmarkhamphotography.com. Also, you can find me on all social media handles at The Plug Lie. Kevin, thanks very much for jumping back on, and we'll chat to you again next week.
Great to chat to you. Good man, Mark.